Joining me now is Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley from Oregon, who serves on the Foreign Relations Committee and was in that briefing. Good evening, sir. What is your view of how the briefing went? Do you share the concerns of your Republican colleague, Senator Lee?
This briefing was incredibly patronizing. The whole argument being presented was that there was an imminent threat. But if you ask any of the questions about who, where, when, how was a decision made, nothing amounted to the fact that there was an imminent threat. And the argument that bringing a debate to the floor of Congress about intervention in Iran or war with Iran would be a factor disrespecting our troops. That idea that Congress is not here to have any role in the issues of war and peace is exactly contrary to the Constitution.
So
a Constitution
you're saying
this president doesn't respect.
Just for folks processing this, because this is all new, relatively recent breaking type news, you're telling us that the administration sent people down and they told you, and this may be why so many are outraged in both parties, they told you that for the Congress, which has the war-making authority in the Constitution, for the Congress to want to debate this is anti-military, anti-security?
Specifically, they were addressing the issue of bringing a resolution to the floor, one that discusses, for example, the War Powers Act or an AUMF, an authorization for the use of military force, that this would be very divisive and show division when we shouldn't be showing division. In other words, there's no respect for the fact that the Constitution lays out the vision that no president should be able to take us to war, only a collective decision by Congress, because decisions of war involve so much blood and so much treasure that it can't be entrusted to one person. That was our founders' fear of the damage of war. And there's no respect or understanding of that. In fact, they proceeded to say that in terms of future consultations, just talking to us in this briefing was their consultation, according to the Secretary of State. This wasn't a consultation. This was a, I don't know, a kind of brush over all the facts because they're not going to really tell us what's going on.
Senator Rand Paul, I mentioned weighing in on this again. This is all late breaking. Here are his new comments.
What I hear was less than satisfying. I see no way in the world you could logically argue that an authorization to have war with Saddam Hussein has anything to do with having war with people currently in Iraq.
Can you enlighten us on what he's referring to in your view of it?
Well, as I just caught that comment for the first time, that argument that dealing with Iraq, and I think he's referring to the 2002 authorization for the use of military force and using that as a justification when it was all about Saddam Hussein for attacking Iran, if I'm extrapolating from what I just heard. Rand and I are introducing, the Democratic lead, he's a Republican lead, a resolution that states, and we just introduced it, that states that the 2001 and 2002 authorizations, one dealing with Afghanistan, one dealing with Iraq, absolutely do not provide congressional authorization for a war with Iran.
And so that is your bipartisan effort to draw a line in the sand early, even if tonight, as we've mentioned, looks like signs of de-escalation, that in no way is the Congress going to sit that out if the Trump administration cites that to do more in Iran.
Well, we absolutely are going to have a debate. I don't know where a majority of Congress will come down, but we absolutely have to have this conversation, this debate, and send the message that it matters, that we have made massive mistakes in Afghanistan, massive mistakes in the war in Iraq that have cost us 10,000 lives, 10 times that in injuries that persist through a lifetime, trillions of dollars of treasure. We need to have the sort of honesty that empowers a debate, not the sort of misleading information that was the weapons of mass destruction, if you will, justification for going into Iraq.
Senator Merkley, as mentioned, a busy night. Thank you for joining us. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.